In a world full of noise, very few moments cut straight to the heart, and this was one of them. Scott Adams, the legendary creator of Dilbert, a man who made millions laugh through his clever satire on office life, recently posted something no one expected. A desperate message. Not for fame, not for money, but for time. He revealed that he is declining fast. Prostate cancer, the same illness that once made headlines when Joe Biden revealed his own diagnosis, is now threatening to take Adams's life. His words shook the internet. I am declining fast. Pluvicto is not a cure, but it gives good results to many people. Pluvicto, a newly FDA-approved treatment, could be his last chance to stay alive. He had been approved to receive it, but then the system failed him. Adams claimed that his healthcare provider, Kaiser of Northern California, dropped the ball. They missed his IV scheduling, leaving him helpless, watching the clock tick against him. Days mattered, even hours mattered, and yet the silence from the hospital grew louder. So, in an act of both desperation and hope, Adams turned to someone unexpected. He went online and said he would reach out to Donald Trump, the one man he believed might still have the power to move mountains quickly enough to save him. His words hit social media like a lightning bolt. I will ask President Trump if he can get Kaiser of Northern California to respond and schedule it for Monday. That will give me a fighting chance to stick around on this planet a little bit longer. Within hours, the post went viral. Supporters, fans, even political opponents all began sharing his message. Millions watched in real time as a man who once created comedy out of corporate chaos was now caught in a life-or-death battle with the system he'd spent his life mocking. And then, something incredible happened. The former president himself, Donald Trump, responded. On Truth Social, he wrote just 2 powerful words on it. It was a simple phrase, but for Adams, and for everyone following, it meant hope. This wasn't about politics anymore. It was about a man's fight for his life and a nation watching to see if humanity could rise above division, even for a moment. And that is how a desperate plea turned into one of the most emotional and unexpected moments of the year. A story that reminded the world how fragile and yet how powerful a single voice can be. But what happened next was even more unbelievable. But it started quietly, almost too quietly for a man who's made a career out of stirring conversations. Scott Adams, 68 years old, best known for his legendary comic strip Dilbert, opened a live stream on Rumble one evening. Fans expected his usual sharp wit, maybe a political jab or two, but instead, they were met with silence. A long, heavy silence. Then, his voice broke through. Soft, shaken, honest. He said, I have prostate cancer, and it spread to my bones. In that single moment, the internet froze. This wasn't satire. This wasn't part of a bit. This was real, painfully real. Adams went on to explain that doctors had told him he didn't have long left, that he might, in his own words, be checking out sometime this summer. The confession came months after President Joe Biden publicly announced he too was battling prostate cancer, a strange, almost eerie coincidence that Adams didn't ignore. He remarked, like Biden, I've got prostate cancer, though I've had it longer than he's admitted to having it. That line hit differently. It wasn't just humor, it was the voice of a man facing death but refusing to lose his edge. But as the news spread, fans began connecting dots, the exhaustion in his tone, the pauses during recent streams, the sudden disappearance from social media. It all made sense now. Adams had been silently fighting a disease that was destroying him from the inside out. And yet, even in his weakest moment, he wasn't asking for sympathy. He was asking for a fighting chance. He revealed that he'd finally been approved for Pluvicto, a breakthrough FDA-approved treatment designed to target advanced prostate cancer. It wasn't a miracle cure, but it was hope. And hope, when time is running out, is everything. But just when it seemed like there was a sliver of light ahead, everything fell apart. His healthcare provider, Kaiser of Northern California, failed to schedule his IV appointment. He claimed they dropped the ball. No date, no response. just silence from the very system that was supposed to save him. So Adams did what many in his generation never would. He took to social media, not to complain, but to plead. A last-ditch call for help, hoping someone, anyone, in power might hear him. And someone did. When Scott Adams made that desperate post, half a plea, half a prayer, no one could have predicted who would respond first. He wrote, "I will ask President Trump if he can get Kaiser of Northern California to respond and schedule it for Monday. That will give me a fighting chance to stick around on this planet a little bit longer." It wasn't just a message to the internet. It was a direct cry to one of the most powerful and polarizing figures in modern politics, Donald J. Trump. And the internet held its breath. Within hours, Trump replied on Truth Social with just 2 words. On it, 2 words that sent shockwaves through social media. For some, it was a powerful act of compassion, the former president stepping up to help a man who had supported him for years. For others, it was a surreal moment, a crossover of politics, pop culture, and personal tragedy that no one saw coming. Trump's quick response wasn't just symbolic. It showed how deeply Adams' words had cut not just through political divides, but into the human side of everyone watching. And Trump wasn't alone. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., another political heavyweight and 2024 presidential candidate, jumped in moments later. He wrote, "Scott, how do I reach you? The president wants to help." That line, "The president wants to help," began trending across X, formerly Twitter, Truth Social, and YouTube. Comment sections flooded with reactions ranging from shock to tears. Even White House Deputy Chief of Staff Dan Scavino joined the conversation, writing, "No need to wait until Monday at Real Donald Trump, at Robert Kennedy Jr., and at Dr. Oz are all tracking now. Scott." The coordination was instant. 3 powerful figures aligning across party lines to help one man who had once been a controversial voice in American media. For a brief, rare moment, politics didn't matter. Compassion did. But as the world rallied behind him, many began asking, how did things get this bad? Why was the system failing him in the first place? While the internet buzzed with headlines about Trump, Kennedy, and Dr. Oz stepping in behind the scenes, Scott Adams was fighting a very different kind of battle. Not against political opponents, but against the healthcare system itself. Adams revealed that, despite being approved for a groundbreaking FDA-approved treatment called Pluvicto, his healthcare provider, Kaiser of Northern California, had, in his words, dropped the ball. They had failed to schedule his IV treatment, and every day that passed without it was a day his condition worsened. Imagine that. A man with fame, money, and millions of fans, still waiting, still begging, just to get a life-saving appointment. He wrote, "I am declining fast." Those 4 words hit harder than any headline. It wasn't a metaphor, it was a countdown. The treatment, Pluvicto, isn't a cure, but it's one of the few drugs offering hope to patients with advanced prostate cancer that has spread to the bones. For many, it can mean months or even years of extended life. But for Adams, that window was closing. And so began the behind-the-scenes chaos. Trump's team reached out. Kennedy's camp signaled immediate support. Scavino and Dr. Oz, both with connections in the medical and political worlds, reportedly began coordinating contacts inside the healthcare system. It wasn't just about helping one man anymore. It was about exposing a system that can move mountains for paperwork, but not for patients. Adams wasn't shy about calling it out. He accused the system of inefficiency and silence in a moment when speed meant survival. His words resonated with thousands of Americans who had faced the same endless waiting, the same bureaucracy. And through it all, Adams remained strangely calm. In his video message, he smiled faintly and said, "It's not a cure, but it gives good results to many people." You could feel both hope and acceptance in his tone, as if he knew he was fighting a system bigger than any one man. By now, the story had become more than just celebrity news. It was a reflection of something larger, a battle between time, power, and compassion. But even as he fought for his life, many couldn't help but remember, This wasn't the first time Scott Adams had been in the spotlight for controversy, and not everyone rooting for him now had always been kind. Even as support poured in for Scott Adams, the shadow of his past controversies began to creep back into the conversation. Adams isn't just the creator of Dilbert, the iconic comic strip that has entertained millions since 1989. In recent years, he became a lightning rod for controversy. In 2023, his outspoken conservative views and incendiary comments landed him in hot water. Penguin Random House dropped his self-help book following a racial rant where he referred to black people as a hate group. Newspapers canceled Dilbert in some markets. He was branded by many as divisive, outspoken, even unpublishable. And yet now, with life hanging in the balance, even critics paused. Suddenly, debates about politics, race, or ideology felt trivial compared to the urgency of saving a man's life. Fans, commentators, and political allies alike shared a single sentiment: empathy. Robbie Starbuck, a conservative commentator, urged everyone to lift him up in prayer and reminded followers of Adams' impact on their lives. Messages flooded in, calling attention not to his controversial opinions, but to the laughter, lessons, and insight his work had brought over decades. It was a stark contrast. The same man who once faced mass cancellations and outrage was now receiving a wave of support the likes of which social media rarely sees. For many, it was a reminder that human vulnerability can cut through even the thickest walls of controversy. Adams himself seemed aware of this shift. His words in interviews and posts balanced frustration with gratitude. He noted the loss of his book publisher, the cancellation of his backlist, and the consequences of his outspoken views. Yet he still acknowledged the flood of support and compassion during his most critical moment. It was a delicate, emotional balance. The man who had faced public censure, now standing at the crossroads of life and death, with the world watching, judging, and, in many cases, rooting for him to survive. But while the controversies faded into the background, another story unfolded: the legacy of the man whose work touched millions. Beyond the headlines, beyond the controversies, lies the legacy of Scott Adams, the man who created Dilbert. Since 1989, his satirical comic strip has captivated millions around the globe, offering a humorous mirror to office culture, corporate absurdities, and the quirks of modern work life. Over 20 million Dilbert books and calendars have been printed in 19 languages across 57 countries. His clever observations and biting humor turned everyday office